Today we're featuring the Stearns County Sheriff's race. We have the two gentlemen who were the two top vote getters in the primary election. Dave Bentrud is here. Dave, good afternoon.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having us in.
And we also have Steve Soyka here as well. So, Steve, good afternoon to you as well.
Hello, and thanks also.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk to these two gentlemen throughout the course of the hour today. We're just talking off air, certainly, and back in the newsroom as well. This is a high-profile race this year. A lot of people seem to be engaged in what's going on with this race, probably because we haven't had an open sheriff's position in Stearns County for quite some time. John Sander was the former sheriff who was the sheriff for 14 years before he resigned last year. So I think a lot of people are engaged this year. Maybe you guys can talk about that. You've both been on the campaign trail since maybe spring. When you go out and meet people and stuff, are they very well aware of the fact that there is an open seat for sheriff this year?
Yes, they are across the county. I've found people are interested for those exact reasons that you said. We haven't had a new sheriff in 14 years, and they're very interested, and I think, in what somebody different can bring to the office.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, talk about that too. Like when you're out on the campaign trail knocking on doors.
Yes, absolutely. And I been doing a lot of door knocking, and when you do find somebody at home, they want information, they ask questions. Surprisingly few just are not interested in having some dialogue. So that's encouraging to me. You know, the idea of having well-informed voters is important.
Mm-hmm. Steve, talk a little bit about, give us your background a little bit, and then also talk about why you want to be the next sheriff in Stearns County.
Well, I'm born and raised in St. Cloud, and I've lived my whole life in St. Cloud. I received my criminal justice degree from St. Cloud State and was lucky enough to get hired in central Minnesota. So I started my law enforcement career 27 years ago in the Benton County Sheriff's Office. In 1996, I was able to switch over to Stearns County Sheriff's Office and have been in the Sheriff's Office ever since. One of my big things with my wanting to be sheriff is to just bring a change in kind of philosophy or thinking to the sheriff's office and be much more community oriented. Not that we're not doing that already as law enforcement, but and as an agency, but just to be more involved with the community, a little more transparent, and just be more interactive with the community.
All right. And then Dave, for you as well, why you're the police chief over there in Wade Park? I would imagine things are going well for you in that position. Like, why make the switch over to the sheriff's office if you'd become elected the sheriff?
Yeah, I'm in a win-win situation. Wade Park's been great to me, but I think the reason for running for sheriff is being outside the agency, certainly working with the agency for a long time. What I would like to do is open up access to technology. We have a regional system, but there are, various feature functions that would allow Wade Park, Sartell, other agencies to be more effective. And so I would like to open up avenues for access to that kind of technology. And as we've seen with the issues like sex trafficking, we're dealing with issues like mental health. We need to be much more collaborative. Law enforcement, prosecutors, victim advocates coming together on some of these key issues, and I'd like to be catalyst for that as sheriff.
Okay. Let's talk about the Stearns County Sheriff's Office has been in the statewide media again over the last few weeks because of the Wetterling case. The current Sheriff Goodmanson gave his news conference a couple weeks back, and then was it yesterday or the day before, the FBI agent responded. So we're getting some of that statewide attention again. I'd like to have you guys just give us, your thoughts on that. We'll start with you, Dave. The Wetterling case and the news conferences that have been happening lately, what do you think that does for maybe the morale, first of all, of the sheriff's office, and where do you go from here from there?
Well, I support Sheriff Goodmanson's decision to have the press conference. I think the Wetterling investigation was kind of the elephant in the room, if I can use that term, or a cloud that just needed to be addressed. And to Steve's point about transparency, to have that conversation, to look at the investigation, to take away things that we could have done better as far as law enforcement. I think that's totally appropriate, and do what we can to make sure it doesn't happen in the future, and be able to allow the sheriff's office to move forward. And I think it was an appropriate thing to do.
How about you, Steve? What do you think about what was said at the news conference, the reaction from that, and especially, you're in the sheriff's office right now. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I also agree with Sheriff Goodmanson's take on that, and I see absolutely nothing wrong with law enforcement if there's some mistakes made to own up to those mistakes. I don't think that investigation was necessarily done wrong, but there could have been some key points that might have been missed. For various reasons. I was only 13, obviously, when Jacob got taken, so I can't comment much on the actual investigation. But when you look at the press conference and the points that were brought forward, it definitely looks like some key things might have been missed at the time. But again, I see nothing wrong with a law enforcement agency saying, you know what, we screwed that up to some extent, and we take ownership of that. And much like Dave said, it's a learning lesson. We learn from that that maybe this is what we should do in the future. Hopefully we never need to do that again in our area, but we take it as a learning lesson.
Do you guys think that I think that law enforcement must be done differently now than it was back in 1989. I mean, you guys have the communication is so much more now because of the technology we have. So technology has probably changed the game quite a bit, right, Dave?
Oh, absolutely. When it comes to investigating crime and crime scene processing, absolutely, we've come a long way in our capabilities. And with cold cases, we hear more and more of cold cases being solved through DNA analysis and things like that. So we're ever evolving as far as our capabilities on crime scene processing and evidence collection, things like that.
Yeah, and how about obviously this is one cold case that was solved and finally be able to take off the books. There are other cold cases as well. Do you go back now and maybe look at some of those other cases that are somewhat similar in nature and maybe with a fresh look?
Absolutely. I don't think maybe the public realizes, but our detective division in the sheriff's office is all assigned a cold case. They're constantly working on those. Obviously, with any cold case, the tips go down, the amount of information coming in goes down, so it makes it much tougher to work on them. But each detective has a case assigned to them. They review those cases. They kind of bounce the ideas off each other, and they do try to employ the latest in science or technology or even training, and for that matter, to try and come to a conclusion, because the victims the victims' families deserve some type of an answer.
We've got about a minute before we take another break. So just each of you talk a little bit maybe about what your top issue is. If you were to be elected as the next sheriff at Stearns County, Dave, what would be the number one issue you'd want to kind of hit the ground running on day one? What would that be?
Well, I think internally, one of the key things is focusing on the jail. I think we do need to do some things to add to our correctional officer staff. I think they're short-staffed. They're spending a lot of overtime to maintain the minimums, and that takes a toll on your correctional staff. So that's one of the first things. Building, repairing the what has been described as a strained relationship between the sheriff's office and some of the local police agencies. Begin working on that, being out in the community and engaging the local chiefs on issues and concerns that they have. There's a variety of issues, the sex trafficking issue that we're going to continue to work on, mental health issues, school safety initiatives. There's a lot of things that need to be focused on.
And Steve, how about you? What's the top thing that you want to really do right away to change whatever's being done there?
I think the staffing in the jail is also the number one thing to start with. They are shorthanded up there. We are burning out some of our good employees by having them come in on some mandatory overtime, and just that whole atmosphere up there. We just need to kind of change that, definitely make them feel like that's a profession for them, not just a job. And that starts with some recruiting and then retaining the people we have. And I think if we can overcome some of that stuff, then staffing won't be an issue. So
okay, it's interesting that you both bring up the staffing at the jail, because we hear the story statewide about the prisons being understaffed with corrections officers, but we don't think about our jails, and obviously the same situation there. To keep them safe is important. So all right, we're going to take a break. We have some news coming up, and then we'll have more from our sheriff's candidates coming up here in just about 10 minutes or so here on the News at Noon show.